Oh, Blackwater, keep on rolling. Whole time I'm reading this book. You youngsters know the Doobie Brothers? Great band. Look them up.
Southerners are an easygoing race when it comes to aberrations of conduct. They will react with anger if something out of the ordinary is presented as a possible future occurrence. Somebody might start to take you serious and lift your chin with a rifle barrel. Lift it right through the top of your damned head. But if an unusual circumstance is discovered to be an established fact, they'll usually accept it without rancor or judgment as part of the normal order of things. That was a great misconception about men. Because they could hire someone on and later fire him, everyone thought they had power. Men controlled the legislatures, but when it came down to it, they did not control themselves. Because men, much more than women, were moved by petty jealousies and the desire for petty revenges. Because they enjoyed their enormous but superficial power, men had never been forced to know themselves the way that women, in their adversity and superficial subservience, had been forced to learn about the inner workings of their brains and their emotions. What he did know was that Eleanor was very much like his mother, strong-willed and dominant, wielding power in a fashion he could never hope to emulate. His mother liked to see herself as a family cornucopia, dispensing all manner of good things, unstintingly and unceasingly. She considered herself amply rewarded by her children's gratitude, and if she perceived that her children were not sufficiently grateful, well, she could make something of that too. Yet all the hiring and firing, the deals and the contracts, the complicated process for putting through a constitutional amendment, these were only bluster. They were blind to disguise the fact of their powerlessness in life. She hated that levy the way you and I hate hell. And all deaths are sudden, no matter how gradual the dying may be.
Hey, what's up, bookworms? Mike back to talk a little horror, on the channel today. Today, guys, we're dipping into 1983's Blackwater by Michael McDowell. Now, it is comprised of 6 volumes, otherwise known as the Blackwater Saga, but this new edition that came out is just calling it just Blackwater now, as it is one long story. Well, released, like I said, over 6 volumes in 1983. Stephen King, John Langan, and Peter Straub have all listed this as a very big influence for their writings. I think that's very prevalent. You read this, if you've read The Fisherman by John Langan, you can see it there for sure. Haven't really read very much of Peter Straub outside of his collaborations with Stephen King, and Stephen King did list this as his influence for releasing The Green Mile in 6 parts over the course of 6 months. So very much a book that completely floored me in every way, guys. If you've been around the channel at all, you know I've been talking about this a lot lately because it is a Book of the Year contender. It was an amazing, amazing ride, and I'm here today to talk about why I think it is just so dang good. But for many of you out there, you have no idea what this is. So let's talk about what this book is about. Now, in the small town of Perdido, Alabama, a stranger named ℙ𝕦𝕤𝕤𝕤 arrives under mysterious circumstances on Easter Sunday, 1919. On the surface, Eleanor is gracious, charming, and anxious to belong in Perdido. She's also eager to marry Oscar Caskey, the eldest son of Perdido's first family. But her beautiful exterior hides a shocking secret, and matriarch Mary Love is perhaps the only person in Perdido with an inkling of Eleanor's true power and purpose. For Eleanor is more than she appears, and she brings to Perdido and to the Caskeys a deadly, inexplicable illness from which no one can ever be saved, guys. 1983, this is Blackwater by Michael McDowell. A little thing that I learned about Michael McDowell leading up to this is apparently he wrote Beetlejuice, the movie. How about that? Small world, huh? So I had never really heard very much of Michael McDowell when I said I was going to read this. It's like, it's one of those things where like there are people who have heard of it and they all just gush about it, but they have actually read it. But it seems like one of those things that not very many people have heard of, but they've read it. They just can't go on about how great it is. And then when you ask them to explain why, sometimes they have a hard time explaining why. And I'm going to try to do that, guys, beginning with what makes it good or bad. Now, you know me. I'm big time about the characters. And the characters in this and their relationships and how they develop over these decades together is nothing short of magic. What McDowell is able to pull off with these generations and just kind of growing and seeing their changes through the years as this book goes through 50 years of this family. So you're dealing with several generations of the Caskey family, people coming and going, characters dying, both of natural causes and not so natural causes, and maybe a little bit of a hanging around after the fact. So it's just got so many things that just make me just want to remember these characters, and they have not left my head since I finished reading this at the beginning of the month. Now, this is listed as a horror book, but it is very much a family drama set in like a Southern Gothic kind of setting. So I love a story that just kind of does a little bit of slice of life and just runs through the years with these characters, and you just feel like you enjoy spending time with them. And you go through 3 generations of this family during that time. And there's never a single character in the story where I'm like, I don't even know why they're here. They need to get off my page. It's like you love or love to hate every character here. And I think that they are all just so majestic, so original, so unique. Because there are a lot of characters, and sometimes you're like, oh, I don't know if I'm going to be able to keep all these characters separate. He differentiates them so well that you will know exactly who is whose kid, who is married to who, all those things. They will all just fall into place. So if it does seem a little overwhelming at first, the way that he characterizes them is just so good, and you're going to have no problems keeping them separate. I feel like a very Stephen King in that way, kind of a needful things, where he gave each character kind of like their little quirks to make it where you're able to tell who is who. And so like I said, going through all these generations, all these things, so going from 1919, 1969, dealing with all of these incredibly important events in Southern America is just such a ride. It really is. So that's just something that I've always really enjoyed. I love Stephen King does this a lot, where you just kind of hang out with characters from childhood, until their elder state. And it works so well. And he is just brilliant at it. McDowell does it as good as anyone that I've seen. So again, not enough credit can be given when someone writes characters this well, but I will always try to, because that is what makes a book go round for me. Next will be the atmosphere. I mentioned Southern Gothic. A lot of people don't really know what it is. This is Southern Gothic to perfection, just kind of dealing with, in the rural South of America during a certain time period, and maybe there's some little bit of a supernatural kind of things going on. I mean, think Faulkner, think Tennessee Williams, think Robert McCammon. I mean, I think that's 3 authors I think that have done that kind of subgenre really, really well. And I'm going to add McDowell to this now because it's just so perfectly said. It just captures that American South in a different time so well, in a different kind of lens that I've seen it through. Because all those stories I've read, it's always told through either the eyes of the impoverished or the enslaved. I've ever seen it through the lens of people that are incredibly wealthy. And so I think that is kind of a different lens. So you're seeing something like the big event, like the Great Depression is going on. It's not really affecting the Caskeys that much, but seeing how they deal with it and how it does kind of trickle down and affect everyone is interesting. So to me, I never really have seen that kind of point of view before. So it made it not where it's like, hey, this reminds me of this book so much, because I will say there are lots of things that remind me of Boy's Life in this, but it's not that so much that it reminds me of something else where I'm just like, this feels like a familiar setting. But these characters are very different than anything I've ever read in this setting before, because the Caskeys are incredibly wealthy and they are incredibly well off. And you can see that, their life is going to be very different than most of these other characters I've ever dealt with in that setting. But you've got so wrapped up, I think, in this family drama that at times you kind of forget that you're in a horror story. It's one of those things where, yes, again, there are horrific elements here, and they're going to wow you when they happen. They're going to shock you, and you're going to be like, oh my gosh. But you'll get so wrapped up in just how these characters' lives and how this family drama is developing, almost in like a Succession kind of way, to where, oh yeah, tentacles, I forgot. This is a scary story. And you just kind of forget about it because the storytelling's so good and the characterization is so good. And it doesn't stop the whole way. It really is just one of those things that never really lets go. But when the frights do happen, they are terrifying. There's some really, really crazy stuff in here. So what I think I would say is you don't have to be a horror fan to appreciate this. So if you're already like, oh, no, I'm hearing the word horror, I'm hearing violence, I'm hearing tentacles, I'm not really into that stuff. Doesn't matter. If you just like great characters and you like good family drama and going through the generations of a family, I think you're going to appreciate something like this. So again, don't let that deter you. This is not something I would sell to a hardcore horror fan. You'll find a lot of hardcore horror fans that get real snooty about it. And that's when they'll say, Southern Gothic's not horror. It's very much its own thing. But again, I don't think there's anything that's ever going to scare you. But, there are violent moments and there are some really freaky things that do happen. And you will be reading them being like, oh my God, what happened to this guy? Why is he like this? But yeah, I do really love what he does. He pulls no punches when it comes to violence. And what I mean by that is it's creepy and violent and no one is safe. And I'm talking women, children, men, it don't matter. Everyone is on the chopping block from McDowell, and don't let you think that anyone is safe from his pen, because he's quite vicious with it. Something I also appreciate is seeing something in this time period in America and seeing that the family is very much run by a matriarch. That's brilliant, and something I had never really seen in this time period in the South. Very much was a patriarchic society, and seeing it, Mary Love kind of run this family, and then kind of seeing where it shifts later on in these generations, it's like, wow. So you even have these characters who are saying like they want to be part of this family that aren't, they're trying to marry in this family because they admire these strong women, and it's just, it really is just, it's never in a way that feels forced. I know some people hear that kind of stuff and they feel like, oh, that's just trying too hard. No, this is very believable the way that it's done. So I know a lot of people will have a red flag that go up and feel like, oh, that feels kind of forced, but never like that. You would think in an incredibly wealthy family like this, that there were a lot of things where the lady was the head of the household, and if the lady is widowed and she's the richest lady in town, you could see her very much being the person that kind of runs this town. So it's never one of those things where I feel like, oh, this is just wish fulfillment. No, it is done incredibly well, and you could say this is something that could have happened. It was rare at the time period, but it's done so damn good, guys, and you're going to love it. Trust me. It is something that is going to be a little different for some people, but it's definitely not a negative. It's just a beautifully haunting story, guys. I feel like it's going to just stick with you for months and months after reading it, because I can still go through this entire family tree and talk about every character if I wanted to, because they're just all so damn memorable. But no book is perfect, right? So what about some things that maybe you call bad, or maybe they just didn't work for me, or maybe they won't work for you? I think there are some things that can be considered vague or unanswered. Yes, this book is very long, but there is some things where you still will have some question marks. And I think that's done on purpose. I think he liked to leave some things ambiguous for you to kind of decide. As soon as I finished it, I talked with someone I know that kind of pushed me to read it, and we were kind of discussing the ending. And we think we understand what was trying to be said there. But I do think there is some things that are left up to your interpretation. Now, it isn't just like I'm not going to answer any of the problems, have fun with it. I feel like there is answers there. Just kind of depends on which kind of conclusion you can bring yourself to. That's kind of how I feel about it. Now, this is a very difficult time during American history. Obviously, segregation and racism is still very much a thing. So again, you're not going to, just because I'm saying, hey, this house is run by a matriarch, it doesn't mean that a lot of those other prejudices are not still there. They're there, and McDowell doesn't try to hide those. I feel like his language is handled a lot better than some other authors I know who have tackled this time period and this location. But it is very much, like I said, segregation and race is very much an issue numerous times in this book. But I will say it's never to a point of degrading or anything like that. And this does depict violence and sexual and physical assault and very disturbing descriptions. So like I said, I never feel like it's going to get to a point where you have to put the book down. I'm just letting you know, if you say, okay, I'm not into horror at all, but I'm going to give this a chance based off of how many great things you said about it. But, you completely didn't tell me about this very, very violent scene. No, there's some stuff that's just horrifying, some straight-up body horror that's going to make you be like, oh, my God, for sure. Those things are there. I don't consider those a bad thing as a horror fan, but if you are a newbie to horror, it might be a little much for you to handle. Some find it a bit too long. It is 800 pages. Here's the thing, guys. It could have went on for another 400, and I'd have been happy. But I tried to split it up to do the 6 volumes and just do one per month, but it splits them up. I think they're about 150-ish, 180 pages per chapter, I guess you'd say. But the thing is once you get to like chapter 4, volume 4, you won't be able to stop. Because I was doing one per month, and then I just said, forget it, I can't. And I read 3, 4, 5, 6, like all back to back to back, because it was just so damn good. I had to know what happens. So I feel like that it does have good breaking points if you want to do that. But I do feel like because the cast is so large, you might start to get a little blurred if you take early breaks on who some of those characters are. So I think later breaks would be better than early breaks like I did. But again, I'm a big old dork and I keep an Excel spreadsheet of characters and stuff. So I'm always able to keep all that stuff separate. But again, if you're not into like the slice of life, just following along some of these characters where there isn't a lot of plot going on sometimes, and it really is just about developing these characters and how they're growing together or apart over many decades and how these characters are changing, that might not be the thing for you. But if it is, this is going to be just what you're looking for. And that brings me to why should you read it? Well, look, if you like your soap operas mixed with a little bit of the supernatural, because this is very much like I jokingly called it the Real Housewives of Perdido, because it is very much about this power struggle between these strong women in many regards, but it also deals with the fallout of their decisions and their actions and what happens to their children and how their children are being affected by the way that they were raised. But then you'll have this crazy supernatural moment. You'll be like, wow, yes, I forgot I was reading a horror book. So to me, that's great because you're getting wrapped up in these characters' lives so much that you forget about this looming presence of this dark and sinister sort of figure. But again, I think you're just going to just eat it up if you just love some coming of age. If you are a Stephen King or a Robert McCammon fan, you are going to be in heaven. This is going to be everything that you love from those two writers, where they're able to just write these characters going through their daily lives, and you just want to spend more time with them. You're going to really, really enjoy it, and it's no doubt that the DNA of this book is all over what Stephen King and Robert McCammon have written. You can see that they were very influenced by the story. So I always tell people kind of, if you enjoy a slice of life, you enjoy spending time with the characters, and you just kind of imagine Boy's Life by Robert McCammon, but kind of like 70 years earlier, with a touch of Lovecraft in it. So it's not really Boy's Life anymore. But I'm saying that setting of Boy's Life, I felt like he just nailed, life in the South during that time period so well. And I feel like that is here, it's just a little earlier, but you kind of get to that point by the end of it. But seeing this from so many different characters' eyes, because I don't say there is a main character in this story. I mean, I guess you'd say Eleanor. I'm not really sure, because she does seem like sometimes she'll disappear and be a background character for a long time. So I think that there are several main characters in this story, but really, I think the main character of the story is just the Perdido River. I feel like that's the main character of the story, and for so many reasons why. And I hope you guys will pick it up again, because I feel like it's something that you would consider an experience. And I can't vouch to it because I don't audio, but I have heard that the audio performance is amazing. So make sure you guys check that out. For my final thoughts, I think back to some books that I've read while I've been doing this channel, and they didn't really hit for me like they did for everyone else. And the two that I namely think of is Jade Legacy by Fonda Lee, which was a good book. I had my problems with it. And The Fisherman by John Langan, which parts of it clicked for me and parts of it did not. My problem with The Fisherman was I felt like I really loved the setup, the framing story. Then I did the flashback for so long, I was like, why didn't you just do this as a period piece? Blackwater does this as a period piece. And I think that's the way that it should be. Not someone telling the story wrapped around something else. And then with Jade Legacy, my biggest complaint with that was like, I love that family. But in the third book, she starts skipping 2 years, 5 years, 7 years, 9 years, all at once. And I'm like, so why am I supposed to care about these kids? I didn't watch them grow up. In Blackwater, you watch all these kids grow up and you get connected to them. So when bad things happen to them, you give a damn. You really do, because you care about them. So taking his time and writing this the way that he did, I think made these characters so strong. And it made this generations of this family and their kids. It just made everything fit together so well that you just wanted to spend time with them. And that is not an easy task to do, especially with a cast this large. So just incredible characters, chilling atmosphere, family drama I couldn't get enough of, guys. This is without a doubt going to be in consideration for the book of the year. Because right now, it's a flip a coin between this and Shogun. That coin's landing on its side right now. These are two amazing books, and I feel like I keep front-loading my years here where I'm getting my book of the month, my book of the year really, really early in the year. But, anything can happen. We're still in the first quarter of the year, but Blackwater is just an amazing ride. And I think if you like any of these things that I've talked about, it's just going to be everything that you're looking for. And I can't wait to read more stories by Michael McDowell, because he wasn't even an author that was on my radar about a year ago. And now I don't know where I'll go next, but I will give anything that the guy has written a try. after this because this book, guys, was just that special. So you can get this really, really awesome edition on Amazon. It's not cheap. I'll drop the link below. The thing was, it's like the hardcover was only like $8 more than the paperback, but you get the whole thing, get this awesome artwork. And I see people see this artwork and they think it's like an anime or something like that. That's just the art style. It's nothing like that on the inside. Guys, it is very much just a Southern Gothic, fully written word novel, no pictures or anything like that. There are some illustrated editions and whatnot. But anyway, guys, I think it's absolutely worth your purchase. It's a beautiful, beautiful book. And I think it's an even better story. So guys, have you read Blackwater? What did you think? Why don't you drop in the comments, guys, and let me know. Let me know what other Michael McDowell stories you would recommend, because I am open for business in that regard. I can't wait to read more from this author because he's just a magician. So drop in the comments, guys, and I will talk to you there.